A very warm welcome at our monthly networking event of the Netherlands Business Council UAE. We have an important topic today to discuss. It's about how to keep motivation and interaction high within your team. Now, as we are all experiencing working from home, this topic couldn't be more timely. For those who don't know me, my name is Stephanie Schachschabel and I am the chairman of the Netherlands Business Council UAE. We will be spending 1 hour together today, and I'm looking forward to walk you through the agenda. As you can see in the agenda, we will start with some updates about the Netherlands Business Council, as well as the events that have been happening in January, as well as the events that are coming up in February. We will welcome new members, which is very important, and as well a warm welcome to all of our panelists that are joining us today to discuss this topic. A warm welcome to Dr. Mansoor Awar. He's the Chancellor of the Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University. A warm welcome also to Mr. Erdem Soyal. He's the Vice President, Middle East and Africa for Barco. And as well, a warm welcome to one of our members as well, Mr. Bart Burghaaf, who is Team and Leadership Development Coach at Views Unlimited. Our panel discussion will be moderated by our Director of Events, Mr. Anthony Dols today. And hopefully you will be all asking questions and we can make this a very interactive afternoon together. So if we go to the next slide, we can see the new members and the updates that the Netherlands Business Council has. So in January, we had our event, Digitalisation in Port Logistics, as well as we looked together with the Dubai Customs and the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Digital Erdem Initiative Business Meeting, which was for a lot of our members very important. We celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the Dutch Sustainability Group at the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week site event webinar, which was organized by our embassy together with the Benelux Council. And for this month, you can see that we also have a lot of webinars still coming. And especially today, I'm very happy to chair this particular panel discussion because all the companies, they're still facing problems with their teams if they work remotely. And although we were hoping that in 2021, the offices would become more open and people could come to the office again, right now we're still in a situation in many countries that we are not able to go to the office. So if we look at the next slides, we can see our new members within the organization of the Netherlands Business Council. So a warm welcome to all of these members. It's very important that even in a time that we are not able to organize physical events, that we come together as a united Dutch business community. So we're very happy to see our organization still growing with the number of new members. And a warm welcome to you all. I know that not all of you are here today, but we hope to see you very soon in the future. If we go to the next slides, then we can see the topic of today and the discussion points. We specifically asked our panelists not to prepare a presentation, but share with them or share with us the wisdom on this topic. So the discussion points will be about innovations and technologies that can improve remote management teams. We will be talking about the digital security, which is now very important, how secure it is to work from home, and what we actually have learned from a pandemic related lockdown. So the upcoming months will still not be the easiest months, and I hope that after today you know how to motivate your teams working remotely. If we look at the next slide, you can see our moderator of today. I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Anthony Dols, our Director of Events at the Netherlands Business Council. Anthony.
Thank you, Stephanie. Dear audience, as mentioned by Stephanie, my name is Anthony Dols, Director of Events for the NBC. And it's my honor and pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished panel for today's discussion on the topic of how to keep motivation and interaction high within your teams. This topic is even more relevant today given the extraordinary circumstances that we all have endured for almost a year now, and where we are distanced physically from our colleagues, our clients, and our networks at large. We've had to learn, and I guess we are still learning new skills, adopting new mindsets, and learning how to use new tools to cope with the very limited to no physical contacts in managing our business, our people, and engage with clients, students, and networks. Being forced in a new operating mode and model has revealed that some things we took for granted as absolutely necessary to achieve performance, such as having a physical office and a physical presence, as key requirements of going about business, have been challenged by recent experiences. I think we all faced and are facing circumstances in which we find it difficult to keep our spirits up, of ourselves, of our teams, and I think we've tried all kinds of ways to motivate our staff to perform at their best. I think we're very fortunate, as Stephanie said, to have a panel that can approach this topic from different sides, with somebody from the educational sector, someone from the business sector, and someone from the coaching advisory sector. Each of our speakers will provide some introductory comments, after which we will have sufficient time, I would think, in which we hope to address all your questions. You can actually address your questions through the chat box, which we have as part of this webinar platform. So you can type it in there, and all the panel members can see the questions. I will take these questions after the address of our panel members and sort of guide the Q&A after the initial comments. So let me introduce to you our panel members of today. Firstly, we have Dr. Mansoor Al-Awar. Dr. Al-Awar, as was mentioned, is Chancellor of the Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University, which he has sort of led since 2004. Dr. Awar has a PhD in applied mathematics from the University of Wales in the UK, and a Master of Science in Applied Mathematics from the University of Michigan in the US, and a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics from the UAE University. He started his career in 1998 with Dubai Police in the Research and Studies Department, and then worked in the Statistics Department. From 2001, he sort of was a founder member and Director General of Dubai's Total Quality Department, and as mentioned, he is since 2004 Chancellor of the university. Dr. Al-Awar, I've seen, has been a prolific writer of articles and books on quality management, positive energy, management of creativity, knowledge management, and performance effectiveness, just to name a few topics with direct relevance to today's webinar. Dr. Al-Awar is also the chairman of the governing body of the UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education. From what I've understood from the university website, the university he leads is very much focused on delivering e-learnings. So we're very interested to hear how both the educational staff and the students are coping with the challenges posed by COVID restrictions in achieving educational excellence. Our next panel member is Erdem Soyal. Erdem is Vice President for Barco, responsible for driving their business in the Middle East and Africa. Barco is a company made of several divisions, amongst others, Entertainment Division, Enterprise and Healthcare Division, which Erdem leads in the region. Erdem started his career at Philips and worked in Central East Europe, Russia, Central Asia, and Asia Pacific. He also worked with General Electric in its lighting division and in GE's current, which provided energy management services. Prior to joining Barco, Erdem also worked with Honeywell in his building technology division, responsible for fire security, electrical products, and his home businesses. Erdem has been active in the Middle East region for more than a decade, and has an MBA from Tilburg University in the Netherlands and a bachelor's degree in electronic engineering. He has a passion for developing strong organizational structures, high-performing teams by using innovative collaborative experience. So we're also very interested to see how he is approaching this from his experience. And last but not least, we have Bart Burgraaf on the panel. Bart is a Dutch national, and he is an intercultural team and leadership development coach through the business he founded, which is called Views Unlimited. He has over 20 years of experience in social emotional intelligence, inclusion of diversity, and behavioral profiling and analysis. He has advised business, including business executives, including those of family businesses, career diplomats, and royal families around the world. His clients include PwC Middle East, WSP, Barilla Group, Emirates NBD, and Unilever, where he is a accredited standards and leadership development partner. He's furthermore an associate and senior behavioral trainer at PwC's Academy Middle East on the subject of diversity, inclusion, organizational culture, and behavioral change. And he is also a visiting lecturer at Nijrode Rode University in the Netherlands. Bart is a registered TEDx host and public speaking coach and has been active on many conferences as moderator and interviewer. In his CV states he also interviewed Kofi Annan in 2017. And he's a Paul Ekman certified evaluator of truthfulness and credibility, which was made popular by the TV series Lie to Me. I haven't seen that, so I can't comment on it. He has lived and worked in the Middle East since 2009. After this introduction and without further ado, I'd like to give the word to Dr. Mansoor Awar for his introductory comments. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anthony. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephanie, the chair, I'm grateful for the Netherlands Business Council for this invitation and talking about new mode of businesses after in the COVID-19 era. I think Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University actually played a role as a survival kit being given to the education system in United Arab Emirates as well as abroad, as well as an alliance with the UNESCO to provide worldwide its experience into it. However, in my introductory note, I would like just to start with an incident that just happened last week. Is about going into a drill. But what we try to do to have the assurance, me as a chancellor, we went into a real drill that people did not know about it in the whole university. We switched off the core business of learning, which we call it the virtual learning environment. And it was down, well planned, and down for 10 hours of 35 minutes. Which are the classes as will be conducted throughout this period of time. And I think today I had a meeting with all the staff online and the university to explain to them how the drill went on. And I think we all had the business continuity plans, we had the risk register, but nobody realized that this will become an action as they need when it happened last Wednesday. So I think by this, I'm going to start my introductory note that I have played a role into how the digital security and all these type of things being maintained. First of all, let me address one of those topics that Stephanie has already shared with you guys, is how to keep the motivation and interaction high within your team as a generic question. And I think, to me, the secret success lies with positive energy. And believe me, positive energy works like magic. And I don't want to go further into this. I think my colleague on the panel, they were going to go a little bit deeper into this. But the consequence of this positive energy, of course, is encourage happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, happiness is infectious. I mean, it can be passed from one person to another. But be careful, be aware that unhappiness is also infectious. So my humble advice for people for motivation is that positive energy. The second point that I would like just to have kind of shed on is what changes should be implemented in a remote management. I can give very quick tips, I would call it, to manage remote teams. These tips will help us as leaders and your team to be productive, regardless actually where they work. Tip number one, we need to focus, ladies and gentlemen, on outcomes, not processes. And I think this is what COVID-19 era has going to be imposing on all businesses across the different segmentation of the businesses, whether it is education, is healthcare, is whatever. So outcomes are important, and a managed aspect of the work being done by remote team. We need to resource our team if we're going to go remotely. It's not a matter that, okay, I know that they have the capability, I know that they have the technology, but I, as a leader, to have to make sure that all those requirements in remote working being resourced on each one of our staff. And the third tip that I would like to share with my colleagues today is to be flexible and understand your team. And we have to understand that the home has a lot of things is going on. It's not like at an office that I am totally focused. We need to be flexible around that part. The tip number 4, I think we need to manage expectations. We need to help our teams to what they should do and create a realistic expectations of their work, not something hypothetical. So, and number 5 is increase recognition, because previously you might go through the offices, tap on shoulders, and all these type of things are not available currently within the leaders. So I think recognition desired by employees for their contribution and increases in the remote working sense. Effective recognition not only motivates the recipient, but also serves as a strong signal to other employees. Another tip that I'm sharing with you today is emphasize communication. It's crucial that we as leaders communicate with our remote staff. The leader should consider communication tool as the best. And also we need to be aware of one drawback of communication. We don't need to be policing them. We need to communicate with them. So we need to have too much oversight can show employees signs of mistrust as well. So we need to be balancing into this. The last tip that I would create for remote is creating a remote work policy. I think that is something that we need to do as soon as possible, because I personally would not believe that the businesses across the sectors will go back pre-COVID-19 era. The remote work policy should cover the rules, procedures, of course, and policy includes everything from expectations of working hours and cybersecurity requirements to how their performances and successes will be measured as well. And I think getting in the habit of being online is totally different. The third point that I would like us to shed some light on it as well is how to make sure that the innovative and creative aspects of digital teamwork at least maintained, if not improved. And I would get to have some tips as well. And the first thing that I would say is give the employee, the staff, the complete freedom to offer ideas. And I think we need to have those ideas, and we need to create channels for being able to provide those ideas, and encourage people to share their ideas in the first flush of enthusiasm, because that is very important. Another tip that I might share with you, the audience today, is give the staff the authority to try new ways to do their jobs. This is, ladies and gentlemen, this is in an explorer experimentation. We explore, we discover. We need to give the freedom to people to suggest how they can do their job, and I think that is something to be aware of. And another tip that I can share as well is never brush off a suggestion when you are too busy to listen. And I think because this, we must show interest in whatever suggestions expressed during the era that we are living. Forgetting to get back to people through their ideas is the surest way to discourage the flow of ideas as well. Another tip into this, how to maintain this team's creativity in a digital teamwork, is always we must acknowledge the idea. And that means that we need to get back to our staff, get back to our employees the status of their suggestions, not let them float across as we don't see them. Tip number 5, we need to consider the merit of each idea as well. And what would be gained in the implementation? Again, the focus is on the outcome of such an idea to the organization. Another step is promote risk-taking. We had, as I introduced myself today in the incident and we created a scenario, we promoted risk-taking actually. And even these ideas, sometimes they feel a little bit risky, we do it. We take bold measures. And another tip, I would call it, don't punish people for bad ideas. I was in a trip to the United States, and I went to Hershey, the chocolate company in Pennsylvania. I was with my kids, and we ran across the whole thing. And then at the end of the trip, in the factory itself, you will be seeing the CEO of such a company. He shared with us, what do you have, what suggestions we have. I raised a question. One of the questions that I've raised, I raised 2 questions. One question was, how on earth that happiness on faces I found in my entire life at that time, I haven't seen anything like it before. And he answered back, the CEO, that he said that we had a suggestion scheme into the organization, and we added only 2 categories of those recognitions. And the first one, whoever finds a malfunctioning, a mistake into our organization, they will be rewarded. I said, wow. Sometimes some parts of the world, that who finds mistakes and promotes mistakes, that should be punished rather than to be rewarded. That's number 1. Number 2, who insisted it and has a big resilience in providing a suggestion 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, until his suggestion got accepted and implemented, will be rewarded. So I think, wow, this is how we do not punish new ideas and bad ideas. And welcome ideas also levels of organization of the award, like I said. The last point that I would like to share with you is encouraging people to help solve chronic problems into the organizations. All of our organizations have chronic problems, but sometimes we need to encourage to help us out by our staff. By this, Anthony, I conclude my introductory notes, and then we'll be ready for that. So thank you very much. If I exceeded the time of 10 minutes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mansoor. I've been listening quietly and making all kinds of notes about your points and your tips, which I think I recognize quite a few. Some of them are new to me, but I think there will be a lot of discussion around this, no doubt. So thank you very much for those introductory comments. And then I'd like to give the word to Erdem Soyal. Please, Erdem, put your camera on and take the word.
Yes, Anthony, you can see me and hear me loudly. Yes, thank you for having me here, Anthony, and the Dutch Business Council, as well as Dr. Mansoor. Thank you so much for your speech before me. I think you gave very, very good elements, what is very useful, and very nice tips. In my session, I would like to highlight just a couple of things in the next 10 minutes. First of all, I would like to give you an intro about Barco and how we play a role in terms of work from home policy and how we encourage the technology behind that, as well as the other part is about a couple of challenges. I would like to highlight 3 challenges and how to address these challenges. There was also one slide that we could show. Are we seeing that? Yes, perfect. So Barco is active. Barco is founded in 1934, just to give you a little bit of history, as a Belgian-American radio company. And Barco has been active in building radios as well as TV, this color TVs. But nowadays, Barco is active in 3 fields, which are impacting people's lives as well. First of all, Barco is active in entertainment. So we basically are equipping a lot of theme parks with projection mapping, immersive experience for museum, as well as VR in terms of virtual experience, and also for projection mapping, as well as simulation for venues. The second part where we are active in is the enterprise business. We are literally capturing technology in all kinds of rooms. So these are the control rooms, so critical and command centers, which are basically present in every single room and every single building, as well as meeting rooms. That's one thing what I'm gonna zoom into a bit in a second. And the last one is the virtual classrooms, which might be also interesting for Dr. Mansoor for his Hamdan University. And then the last part where we're active in is the healthcare business. We are active in the diagnostic imaging and the surgical part of the visualization. So if you can click the slide. Like I just said, we are active in meeting collaboration. Nowadays, with the working from home policy, Barco is active in hybrid meetings that improve collaboration and engagement in the workplace area. So we have innovated and we have developed a product which is called the ClickShare, which enables the wireless presentation and enable also the hybrid collaboration for people working from home as well as offices, because we really feel that the hybrid working model is the new normal going forward. Next one. So when we take the current situation of, can you press one more? When we take the current situation of the coronavirus, which has become one of the greatest accelerators for workplace transformation of our lifetime. At some point, there were around, just before COVID, there were around 350 million people around the globe working from home. Just literally in 3 weeks, it became more than 1.5 billion. So this created quite some challenges on the working floor, but also for the employees. So it created challenges in terms of working remotely, the learning, the working, the collaborating online, building resilience, and also inclusiveness for and around the workplace. If we look at the situation before the pandemic, the meetings were long, the meetings were crowded, formal. Meetings nowadays are short, they are productively small, they are remote, and they also include a lot of technology. For some of the people, if you look from people access, for some of the people, the freedom of working remotely has been a positive experience, though, despite, of course, the unfortunate circumstances. It improved their productivity, it reestablished their healthy work-life balance, as well as the commuting hours from work to office has been eliminated. However, for others, it really felt a tangible sense of isolation. People very much miss the face-to-face interaction, as well as the engagement with friends and colleagues. We have also seen in several reports that many employees, they have reported the overuse of video conferencing during the lockdown has left them feeling really frustrated and disengaged. The feeling is that the virtual meetings have taken the fun away, engagement, and also the humor out of the interaction with colleagues. So now I would like to highlight 3 challenges around these working from home policy. So first of all is the leadership challenges. Like Dr. Mansoor also mentioned, it is very important that we listen to our people, especially the employee health and well-being will become the next big thing in terms of managing people remotely. Nowadays, you also see companies who also hired a director of health and well-being, who will be basically responsible for strategic management of employee wellness practices, such as emotional, physical, mental, financial, social, and career well-being of all employees. The second challenge, what we also see is the technology challenges. As you have most probably read everywhere, the offices are not, and as you can see, the offices are not as they were a year ago. The offices are empty. Nowadays, we have a hybrid model where part of the people are still coming to the office. But the larger question is how the HR department, IT department, as well as the real estate come together to reimagine the office and develop the hybrid office solutions. Technology will play there an immense role, important role. The importance there is that we see for the future that most of the employees, around 60%, they see minimum of 2 days working from home. That means that the offices and the companies will also need to equip themselves based on these collaboration standards. What again means that a hybrid collaboration, working from home as well as from office, and the engagement and the interaction between both will become the new norm. The other element, what is also pointed out just before me, was the cybersecurity. What you see nowadays is that because a lot of technology are being used, cybersecurity becomes more and more under pressure, as well as the IT infrastructure for working from home. The IT infrastructure, you can imagine that when you are having 1, 2, or more kids, you're working together, your kids, literally, my son is working with an iPad, my other son is working with his phone, and I need to call in from my home. All of a sudden, you see that my video is not working or my voice is not clear. And these are the constraints which really creates a serious issue on the workflow. It's not basically only working from home, but we should basically call it any remote location, because it's very important that the job needs to get done. Dr. Mansoor says outcome, I call it outcome versus income. It's very important that we set clear KPIs and create an operating mechanism in place that we can follow that these KPIs are being made. Wherever our employees are doing their job, whether it is in a coffee shop, whether it is with their friends or from home, I think as a leadership for the future, it doesn't matter that much. It's really about the outcomes rather than the input we generate. What is also important is the third element, which is basically the social and the emotional or the psychological challenges. What we see is that in the working from home policy, that there are more challenges around that we need to connect more, we need to get more engagement, meetings outside, arrange back to office days, but also making sure that the people are not feeling alone, but they are creating more engagement and moments of collaboration and socializing. I would like to also give you one more example I have recently faced, literally last week. I was in one of the tech firms in Dubai, and what I have seen in the office is that it was an office for 600 people in Internet City, and what literally touched me is that out of the 600 people working from the office before COVID, literally only 5 people were in the office. And that, as you can imagine, requires a lot, like I said before, a lot from the employee as well as from the manager. So my recommendation there would be a couple of things. First, for the remote workers, for the people in charge, whether they're working from home or from any remote location, my recommendation would be focus on your well-being. It's important that your physical, but also social and psychological intelligence and engagement is on a certain level, which allows you to keep on being productive and efficient for yourself, as well as for your family and for the company. Second thing, what I would recommend for the remote work is to keep the engagement is using video. I still see when I have a group meetings that people don't switch off the video. It is their choice, but at the same moment in time, a video will allow you to create emotional connection with your employees, with your peers. It will allow you to have eye-to-eye contact, even if it's virtual. Another point is making sure that you set up your physical and virtual workplace in a productive and an efficient way. Because at some point on short term and medium term, your company can get results, and you will make sure that you work 12 to maybe 13, 14 hours sometimes, because you don't have breaks, you don't have the coffee corner that you normally have in the office. But make sure that you set up your physical workplace in a way that it is ergonomic, and on a mid-long term, it doesn't create a physical burden for you. And then the last thing for the remote works I would recommend is being inclusive, making sure that you are really connected with your peers and that you really make sure that you participate in remote meetings. Just last couple of things also for the managers. I would recommend to, like Dr. Mansoor said, to be transparent about the workload, making sure that you set the expectations on a proper level. Another thing is that to over-communicate with your remote workers. It is never enough. To making sure that the expectations are set clear. The other thing is also about, I call it my people, the virtual water cooler opportunities. Take some moments where you that you can get the connection together. Have some fun activities online. Whether you drink something together or any kind of engagement, I would really encourage it. And then the very last point, is, as we will need to do for the future, for the managers, we will really need to invest in tools, technologies, and equipment, making sure that our people are resourced with the right fitting and right technologies so that the productivity and efficiency can be kept on a very high level. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Erdem, for those comments. It's sort of interesting. I heard you make this comment about the camera, about the connections, which I think is absolutely very important. I worked in December with a company on a webinar course, and they were actually using a system where the camera was measuring attention. So I think Dr. Mansoor said that we sort of should not just control, but this was sort of an interesting thing because it kept the people engaged, because they knew that when they were looking, that they also were seeing as being engaged. So it was sort of a two-way street. So thank you very much for those comments. Let me then go to, last but not least, to Bart to make his comments, and then we'll open the floor for questions. By the way, I'm just looking at the chat box. I don't see many questions coming in yet. So if people don't see the chat box yet, look on the menu in the right top corner, and you can open in the menu, you can open the chat and just put your questions there. I already put one question there, said that you could put your questions here, so please put your questions in. Okay, thank you very much, Erdem, again, and the floor is yours, Bart.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and thank you, fellow panelists. One of the reasons I was happy to join this panel conversation is an objective around learning, and the first speakers already helped me tick that box. So thank you very much for sharing those valuable insights, both from an academic, educational perspective, as well as from the business. And what's very interesting about the introductory comments of both speakers is that many of the things that have been pointed out are actually rooted in science and behavioral science. This is my field of study that I'm very excited and passionate about. And the reason I do that through my work in team leadership and coaching is that when we understand why and how we show different behaviors, why we get excited about things and other people don't get excited about things. In other words, what makes us very different? The more we understand those differences, where we come from, the more likely we would be more open and curious about those differences, and be not just tolerant of those differences, because I have a bit of a difficulty with the word tolerance, but really to be accepting and inclusive about those differences. And especially in the virtual world that is, to the point of our previous speakers, virtual is going to be around for a while. So inclusion, the feeling of belonging to something that matters to you in the business environment or anywhere for that matter, is even more important than before most of us went into virtual working. So my purpose really is around forging human connection in teams, organizational teams. Now, this pandemic has upended for so many their lives in so many ways. Anything from changing the bedroom into offices, rearranging family schedules, homeschooling, and not to forget to mention the loss of life almost a year into this pandemic. So what's really happening in our brain is that anxieties are up. And to meet the objectives that the previous two speakers pointed out, I thought it would be interesting to have a bit of a look into what happens in our brain, in between our ears, what happens when we feel anxious, when those stress levels go up, and what are some of the strategies, to the point of Erdem when he mentioned about the social and emotional well-being. What are some of the mental hacks that we as leaders or co-workers can deploy in order to lessen those anxieties, those feelings of insecurity, so we can open up and show our full selves, right? So I think that's there's a slide waiting, and just checking if I can see. Yeah, this is a slide. This is not going to be a big presentation, but just to give you an illustration of what happens in the brain. This is the brain looking from the top down, where the blue layer is famously known as our frontal cortex. This is really the part of the brain that differentiate us from the mammal kingdom, for most mammals at least. So it allows us to think, to have a sense of consciousness, to learn a language, to have an understanding of time and place, to have values and beliefs and a sense of purpose. Those are distinct human traits, and these are also the human traits that we can invite and seduce each other to unite around. Shared beliefs, one example. But the problem is, the moment we are exposed to stress, or when we think the environment in which we are is not safe, that's a very foundational brain mechanism. Our brain is always watching for danger. This is why we always, scan the bad headline news items, for example, not necessarily because we like to read bad news, but it's really an old-rooted mechanism of our brain stem that's just checking out, is this a safe place? And that's exactly what's happening in the workplace as well. We're always on guard. And the more you have an inclusive culture, the more we can show ourselves, the more we, to the point of the first speaker, the more we are appreciative, the more we express, and I'm just checking my notes quickly, the more we recognize people's contribution. These are all very subtle but very important strategies to help ease the mind so we can leverage those capabilities and skills. So what happens, this is a bit of an animation, when we feel stressed, either because we're not being listened to, the camera is not working, the audio is failing, the network goes down, some of those what they call hygiene factors in virtual communication. What then happens, and Ria, my wing woman, is going to hit the right arrow on her screen so we can see a little bit of an animation, but that's one too far, one back please. But the moment we experience stress, then this also, for many of you, famously known hormone called cortisol is released into our bloodstream. And the problem with cortisol, well, it's actually a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing, it helps us to be alert. I have to act something. So this is sort of what initiates the fight or flight mechanism. But the problem is the stress sustains. Now I am less able to leverage my talents, my skills, my know-how. So my more automated habits of behavior kick in. And these are usually not very inclusive because we enter into survival mode. So what we're trying to do, through the way we also, to the point of the previous speakers, in order to have people mostly engaged, is to do things like recognition, make people feel involved, that they belong, let them make mistakes. Indeed, I've heard this point earlier today on this call. So learning as a means, making mistakes as a means to learn, not as a means to punish. So the more you do things that promote a sense of inclusion, of bonding and belonging, the more, and Ria, if you can hit the arrow back button one more time, the more you decrease the stress levels, the other way around, the more you decrease the stress level, and now your full, what we call in psychology, cognition is operational, which practically means most of your talents, your skills, but also who you are as a person. When you feel safe in the environment in which you work, you're more likely to take risks, which can be anything from questioning your boss's viewpoints, challenging an idea in order to make it better, right? But the moment we feel we're not included, we're not safe, either because of failing technology, the hygiene not in place, or because we have an attitude issues between people, or a very simple misunderstanding, the more that cortisol gets in the way and the less we trust our environment. Okay, now, so one of the things you can do, there's basically three principles that we know from the field of neuroscientific research. That is three strategies. And I'm gonna sum them up really quickly, and then maybe later on we can have a further discussion on how to actually do that. Number one, and I've heard that from the previous speaker as well, when he said, promote clarity, make sure that people understand what we're going to do. What is the plan? The human brain has a distinct need for predictability, and planning is one strategy to mitigate the fear of not knowing what will happen. Just an example of predictability need is we always check the weather. Well, at least in this part of the world, which is beautiful, by the way. It's snowy weather in Holland at the moment. But we have the need for predictability. This is why we have insurance policies, for example, to prevent ourselves from harm what may happen in the future, right? So clarity is important, which ties partly into the need for predictability. The second one is lifting people up. And I think that's been mentioned very clearly before, to recognize people's contributions, to show them that their individual skill or expertise is really valued. It's an act of inclusion that reduces anxiety levels and makes people they are relevant and that they matter. And the last one is force clarity. Be transparent. That's what it really is about. So transparency means not sharing confidential information because there's a reason things are confidential, but saying, for example, that certain information can't be shared because of very credible reasons also mitigates threat reaction in the brain. And that means that people are more likely to keep this trust relationship going. So transparency is a very important strategy in order to help promote clarity. And last but not least, and then I'll stop for now, is to have a clear vision. Now, I know vision and mission is buzzword language in consulting and business coaching, and etc. But for the brain, vision is really important. Why? The more we know what we think may happen in the future, the more we anticipate towards a future that may be better for us, the more we get this other really hormone, or actually it's not really a hormone, it's a neurotransmitter. It's the neurotransmitter called dopamine, which is related to rewards. So the more you create prospect of what may happen after all the hard work we do together, the lesser the cortisol levels, the higher the dopamine reaction. It's not the reward itself that gives that wonderful rush of feeling good about what you have achieved. It's actually the anticipation toward the moment of success. And in COVID times, that's about saying, you know, if we stick to the rules for the next 2-3 months, we may be in a far better place. That narrative in itself spikes dopamine. It gives you perspective. And that's very much tied into this distinct human need of forcing clarity and predictability. And with that, I would like to leave it for now. And I hope there will be a lot of good questions so we can have a stimulating conversation. Thank you.
Great, Bart. Thank you very much for those comments. I'd like to ask the other panel members also to switch on their cameras, because then we can go into the question and answer session. If I may kick off with one question to Dr. Mansoor, I think one of the first things that I saw you mention, and I also realized that you read in some articles about, is positive energy. And it's sort of, from my point of view, interesting how you see ways to create positive energy or to instill positive energy. Because I think a lot of people now, you know, with all the restrictions we have, and of course in Dubai we're lucky, and UAE, because we feel less restricted than in some areas in Europe, that people are sort of very down, and actually the energy is not, it's difficult to get yourself up into the positive energy. I'm interested to what you, what suggestions you have, what tips you have in that respect.
I think it has few things to be able to boost that positive energy. I think the first one is, like my colleagues on the panel said it very clearly, is set clear goals, because people, they have to get away from ambiguity, from gray areas that you don't know what is expected, and especially when we go remote, it will become much more darker than it would anticipate. I think also one of the things that it will get the positive energy boosted is foster collaboration with the team. If I have a team, that means that if I am a leader, then I have to be able to inject that positive energy within the team by what some of the things that I have said is by recognition of different layers. Positive energy, actually, it has 4 dimensions. The first dimension is from the leader to the followers, to the team members, for the head of the team to the team members. That makes one dimension of the positive energy. So I need to boost them up at all times in every meeting that I conduct. The second dimension actually is the positive energy from the staff to the manager. So from the followers to the leader, and that's very, very important, because that is where I think Mr. Erdem has alluded to. When you switch on your cameras, the eye contact is very, very important to see whether they are sleepy or whether they are awake with you as you boost them, their energy up. So I think that is very important. So the third level is between peers, the positive energy, the dimension of the peers dimension, how they can boost each other's positive energy. And the last one is self-positive energy, self-reflection, self-determination, self-confidence in order to be able to do the whole thing. So I think that is something that we need to do. And I think one of the areas with the remote working and positive energy is this remote working creates millions of opportunities for self-development. And I think self-development, it gets people the self-confidence where I have the skills being polished during these times. And also previously in a conventional, in a traditional work environment that we used to call pre-COVID-19 is provide the team with a pleasant place to work. Now that place is becoming virtual, is in the cyberspace. How are we going to be able to create that momentum? We have an experience in terms of the learning experience. When the learners are online, when you provide a class in a virtual session, you need to have an appealing environment and virtual environment to your learners, to your students. And again, I would emphasize what I have said at the end. Encourage happiness. Encourage happiness. That's very, very much important. If you would like to revive your team, you have to create positive energy. As a conclusion, that's the happiness that the people would get. And I said, I think I've come across also in positive energy. Please, if you are managers, leaders, don't micromanage. Don't micromanage. Let people excessive supervision, overwhelming people with these type of things. And the last thing that will create positive energy, and a lot of people do not know it, please avoid useless meetings. Those meetings are actually the vampires of positive energy. Yes. So in order for us to become energizers, not the vampires, is to avoid those useless meetings. Sometimes by creating meetings on the remote side, okay, in order for me to see the people working, that's sometimes becoming kind of a negative energizer, I would call them.
Can I ask a question about that, Dr. Mansoor?
Yeah, of course.
So, because this is very spot on, both on the point of micromanagement as well as being invited to meetings that are completely useless. One of the reasons, there's something what we call over-inclusion. Too many names on the CC, because I don't want to have an issue with you for just forgetting to copy you in on the invitation. But the problem of over-inclusion goes both ways. One is that the person who sends it may have too many people in the room, which makes the meeting ineffective. But the recipient of the message may feel awkward to decline because he doesn't feel psychologically safe. And the reason I'm saying that, especially in the Gulf and Arab world, where I've now worked for about 12 years, where you have very hierarchical, masculine kind of management cultures, many people struggle to decline the invitation from the boss, for example. There's actually few companies that I know, and that's what keeps people in my profession so busy these days, to really forge inclusive team cultures, which means that I feel myself surrounded by people that I can trust. In other words, a psychologically safe environment. So my question is, in your experience, what are the things that we can help leaders with more of, leaders and their teammates, to take more risk, to feel safe enough to say, hey, Dr. Mansoor, thanks for the invitation, but I'm just too busy with other priorities at the moment. You seem to be like someone who's very open and tolerant, or accepting, I should say, with that. But there's a lot of people on this call, I think, who also may be less confident from the relationship they have with their bosses to say, thank you, but no thanks. What's your advice, please?
I think from an academician point of view, Mr. Bart, I think we need more research in terms of this disruptive business environment which is going online. I think Erdem has already alluded to such a redesigning the work environment, how you redesign the office overall, and that hierarchical system, that the whole. I mean, let me put it this way: on a learning part, when we launched the Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University, is the first online university in the whole MENA region, and we were talking to people like said, yes, this was in 2002, by the way. I was telling the people 4 questions, Bart. I said, do you believe that shopping is essential? If you think yes, then shopping malls as brick and mortar, not anymore. And people were reluctant to accept that concept. But today, even in Dubai Mall, almost more than 65% of the purchasing and selling is online. So people are actually going there not just for shopping. Is banking is essential? If yes, banking is essential, but banks as brick and mortar, not anymore. Consequently, we were saying to people in terms of education, is learning is essential, universities are not. Schooling is essential, schools are not. People were reluctant to accept that concept. But I think once the COVID-19 came, and I always tease my colleagues at the university, I said, I'm going to build a statue for Corona. Because but Corona came in and the whole concept of recognition of online learning becomes a reality. So I think we need, first of all, to answer your question, I think we need more research into redesigning offices, redesigning business environment. And I think that's very, very crucial. We have done that in our university because we train each faculty who joins Hamdan bin Mohammed Smart University, he must go as a contractual obligation, has to go to e-faculty certification. E-faculty, not because he's incompetent in terms of being a faculty, but online has a different pedagogy altogether. The way it's not a matter of PowerPoint presentation anymore. It's the whole pedagogy of learning is changing. So in the work environment, I will advise the same. I think we need to shift of paradigm in terms of hierarchical system. That is, if the business around the world, not just only the Arab world, I mean, even in the whole world, are some of those companies today, they are applying the Chapter 11, which is the bankruptcy, and going totally off the grid because they're going to go online. I mean, if you're off the grid, I mean physically. So I think it's a matter of how we're going to perceive. We need more research into this and more outcomes.
Yeah, I think
if I may reply on.
Okay, one second. Maybe to hook onto that, and then you're on. There was one question that was on the chat panel, and it was sort of saying, hooking into what you were saying about remote learning, that the question was, will remote learning become the future? I think what the question is here, what are you seeing in terms of the increase in remote learning in the current environment? Will it sort of become the standard, or do you see that? Yeah.
Well, very briefly, I think the answer is straight yes. You know, one of the trends that we see is that those companies who were reluctant to do remote work in the first place, even before COVID, had to do with the lack of trust in their people. It all depends on the roles people have, whether you actually can physically work from home or outside the office. I think COVID has taught us, and people who were reluctant, that home working is actually not that bad. There's a lot of silver linings around it. You know, people have learned to trust each other, are learning to trust, are learning to relate differently online. But there's also bottom line business benefits. I mean, think about real estate savings. I mean, some of my clients I know are laying off some of the property contracts because they don't need all that office space anymore they used to have. So a combination of factors, and I'm sure Erdem, especially, you know, being a supplier in his industry, I think this is just 2 examples out of many that show that hybrid is here to stay.
Yeah, the question I was actually raising was about, that was on the first chat. It said, remote learning, whether remote learning will become remote working. Yes, it's very important. That's a whole story about. But this was Dr. Mansoor. What he sees in his practice, because his university is very much focusing on remote learning. What does he see?
I think
bigger uptake?
I think the education landscape is going to change significantly in the very near future, much more faster than we have anticipated. And I think there are yet lots of signals from big online engines that they are going towards education, because I think education going to be, like I said, learning is essential. Universities are not. We have created the system. If you go to any dictionary and find out what the definition of education is, a matter of transfer of knowledge and skills. But there isn't any single dictionary that they say schools and universities. We have created such a system for the last hundreds of years. Now is the time to change the paradigm shift in terms of the learning overall. And I think that is going to be happening in the next decade, and maybe faster. But this is what is going to happen. And I think lots of policies and procedures and no by those accreditation agencies is going to happen, is going to blow up the whole cans of worm, if it is right to say so. But I think it's a matter of, yes, there is a difference between distance learning and smart learning. What I'm trying to say is shift of paradigm even in the pedagogical approach. Distance learning have been there for more than 100 years, but I'm talking about the smart learning, the way that our kids are used now to have. And I think that will be the challenge for the whole community of teachers, faculties. We don't still, Hamdan and Mohammed Smart University, we are going to launch in Expo 2020 Dubai, the first cyber palm for education, where education going to be at the your fingertip. Choose whatever you want, establish anything that you want. You will be able to. Why I have to go through the college of 4 years if I have the chance to polish whenever I need to polish the skills to come back to the university and have them. Maybe in this part of the world, much more exposed to these type of ideas. But I think these things being vivid in Europe, both North America and other parts of the world as well.
Yeah, Dr. Mansoor, if I may add one more thing to it, next step of that is that from technology perspective, is that what we see also happening is that some companies already started using virtual reality. So you have classrooms where you have the one-to-one interaction where you are transferring knowledge, but you have also, let's say, the applications or the previous, let's say, workshops, if you say so, where people come together and then get really the skills. And already some companies are using today the virtual reality for example, sales training, where they are using immersed in real life scenarios. Yeah? So whereby, for example, in front of you, you have a customer, and then you give a pitch to the customer and you get the feedback from the customer. And so that's already also, we already start seeing the first initiatives in that direction, which I think will be more accelerated. Like you said, that it becomes a new standard on learning as well, on the remote learning. Maybe two more things I would like to add from my side is on the first discussion, Anthony, that you opened about the employees and the managers. I would like to also highlight one more thing on the manager's perspective, let's say the people leaders, if you may say so. Because we talked already a lot about employees, the impacts, the advantage and disadvantage. If you look at the manager's perspective, and Dr. Mansoor, and from psychological perspective, Bart, hopefully you will also join this part, is that it is really, I see also with my managers, it's really a very big challenge for the managers to manage their team appropriately. They don't know what is the new normal. They don't know how to act with this remote learning. And I feel that we as leaders of this new way of working, or the professors, or the chancellor, or the dean, or whatever you call it, I think it's important that we help our people, especially the people leaders who are managing people, to understand and what are the rules around how you operate in different circumstances. Like what you said, Bart, one of the questions was, okay, how do you organize in a way that people can say no for a meeting, right? And I think the most important thing there could be, I'm not saying it's the only one, could be, is to have a very clear guidelines on how you communicate online. Very clear guidelines. When you join a meeting, when you don't join a meeting. Obviously, we are coming from a very hierarchical region. This region, like you said, you cannot say no to a boss. But I think if we can help the boss to organize in a way that he can say to his team, you can say no to me. You don't need to join a call with 20 people where you have any contribution. They don't need to join. Like Dr. Mansoor said, they can be more effective by doing other things, and getting the minutes of the meeting is much more effective. One last thing about the footprint part, what you highlight as well. I think if you look at I gave you an example of this tech firm of 600 people working, and then currently 5 people are working. I think the office of the future will not be removed totally. Yeah? So when you talk about a footprint of, let's say, 100 or 1 million square feet, most probably this will go into a range of 20–30%. Because, like I said before in my speech as well, people will come back to the office. They need to see each other physically. They want to come together. They want to have meetings in the office, social moments, get the coffee corners, making sure that you have the engagement. And when you need to have a presentation, when you need to prepare something, you go home and you have full focus. Of course, if you don't have a dog or cat or kids around you, but the intention is that you fully focus at home. So the footprint, yes, will be reduced. On top of that, the technology of this footprint in the offices will be also extended by having this hybrid collaboration technologies.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
right.
I can respond if you like quickly. But in the meantime, I'm also curious what happens with our audience. If you have questions or comments, I'm very much of an interactive type communicator, so and I can't see anyone except my fellow panelists and Anthony. I'm really curious to get some of your insights from the community that we're in at the moment. Adam, to your first point on psychological safety, that is, building a virtual culture. That's the harder part. Building a culture of inclusion, and again, a culture of inclusion means that we're in a safe place. And when we're virtual, we cannot use some of our senses. That is a compromise to our brain, and therefore we find online tiresome. And your point to making eye contact, having the hygiene in place, and having the infrastructure properly sorted already helps the brain to ease the mind, and therefore we are more relaxed. And when we're more relaxed, we're more open to people that act or behave different than we are, or have different viewpoints than that we have. Part of the answer lies, I think, in empathy. When we can't see and meet each other physically, one of the really powerful ways to do this is through storytelling. In the introduction, Anthony mentioned my work for TEDx, doing TEDx event as a host. Last year, in the COVID, halfway into COVID, I've witnessed firsthand what happens with a room when people share stories, and especially stories that are personal, stories that have meaning, that forge connection. So typically in hierarchical cultures, whether it's online or in the world as we knew it, it's really about how good you are, what accomplishments you've achieved, your degrees, your title, your position, your salary, etc. It's more at the superficial level, but bonds really emerge from shared identities, from shared experiences, for example. So if you spend a substantial amount of time on your teams, whether that's in the academic, educational field, or in the business or any sector, sharing stories is an extremely powerful way to forge that bonding and belonging, and you can weave that into learning. So one of the things we did last year with a large global player is to help the senior leadership team get out of their comfort zone and tell things about themselves that matters. And these were Arab people, that were people from the subcontinent, these were people from the Far East. And they never had the experience of speaking about really personal things and how that related decision-making and vision in the business context. And when they did, they actually learned the real person behind the job title. And that was so profound that people had all this oxytocin going. This is the bonding hormone, because they felt so connected. So storytelling, and use storytelling as a means to learn and transfer knowledge. I mean, history, all civilizations are based on storytelling. They evolved through storytelling. The more we embed that, Arab culture, the Gulf culture is very strong in storytelling in its history. So the more we embed that in transferring knowledge, this is why Plato invented the academic 500 years BC. It's a very good way, and it's coming back to the virtual workplace.
I've actually, you said were there questions from the audience. I just sent you one directly to the chat, which came directly to you. But while you read that, I wanted to ask questions to Dr. Mansoor and to Erdem, because one of the tips from Dr. Mansoor was create a remote work policy. And I think what we're also discussing is that, how can you help people also to have an infrastructure at home and a situation at home when they work, or remote, that's called remote at home, that is actually suitable for them to perform. Because I think what happened in the beginning, and I've sort of talked from my own experience from different people that I've talked to, they were first just let alone. And some people were doing it in the broom cupboard, some were doing it in another place. There is sort of a lot around the policy side that you were mentioning, Dr. Mansoor, and the sort of, let's say, director of health, you could sort of say, but almost director of healthy environment that you talk. So what are your experience on it? Is that actually happening, or is it sort of left to people to sort it out for themselves, what the policies are and what you should do?
I think I'm going to talk about my experience when we started this project of the University Online, because it changes the way that the faculty would behave as well as the learners as well. I think we lived that period of time that to educate people. I think education is one of them. And I think also in this regard, there is a major point that we need to have kind of a disruption. And this disruption is to give up control. That's what I'm talking about, online learning. Online learning is still, we are in the era, and when we started, when the era of we have an LMS, learning management system. Learning management system is about control. Little by little, as the days go along, then you will be having the e-portfolio, where you feel that you can design your interface of LMS, nothing called LMS. So I think all the aspects of the bosses, the regions, it needs time and also education. So I think it's a matter of giving up that control when the employee, that Bart has said, that not to say no to his boss. And we are saying even to our learners, Anthony, that you guys at Hamdan Mohammed Smart University, you are in the driving seat. So the learner keep asking me, Dr. Mansoor, if we are in the driving seat, what the hell you guys are doing in the management and the faculty? What they are doing then? If we are in the driving seat, I said, well, we have the wisdom and we are your Google map. The Google map doesn't function unless you enter the direction. You tell me what you want, our wisdom, we tell you what they are. So I think it's a total paradigm shift that we need to see. And in the business community, we are still, let me talk about this geography that I belong to. I think we still have the notion of control at all levels, even at our houses. So I think that thing, because the new generation are so liberal, and they are not doing this. They are much more knowledgeable than their dads and their grandpas. So I think it's a matter of society change, but we need to come to it and to design it, and like Erdem said, and Bart has alluded to in the psychological part. So I think we need to build up that momentum of things that it is not in control. You have to be flexible. I said, be flexible. One of the tips, be flexible, because you need, at the end of the day, the outcomes. And Erdem was also alluded to the other part. So I think that's my understanding to this.
Flexible. The harder thing, because Dr. Mansoor, this point is really spot on. Flexibility, again, the condition to be flexible is that I perceive my environment as safe. And for many, people don't experience that, whether that's their own perception or actually because they do work in a toxic organizational culture. Which takes me to the question Anthony posted on the chat function. The question was, acknowledging that uncertainty is a stress boost, how would managers or leaders provide direction in case they lack a sense of direction themselves? So how can they be leaders and leading forward if they don't know where forward is? This is how I interpret this question. So, it depends a little bit on the person you're dealing with. If this is a person that got in that position as a Peter principle, so he may just not be qualified to be in that role, that can happen, that's going to be difficult. But what always happens, what's always possible is to be empathetic. Even your boss is going through a lot of misery that you may not be aware of. He may have pressure on his marriage. He may have issues with health of his children, or being stressed out because he hasn't seen, or she hasn't seen, a family member for a long time because they were, bound from traveling. So there are a lot of stress factors that not only happen to us, but you can fairly assume that also your boss and your boss's boss are in a very harsh situation like yourself. The difference is that they have more responsibility and they're supposed to solve everything. My answer to the question is act with empathy. Find out what's going on in the mind of this person. These are human beings. They may act like, excuse my French, a-holes, but these are people, and they, good and bad, for good and bad, they try. So never assume. Have a personal conversation when you don't have the tension going. Just take a phone call. How are you doing? What's happening? How's your family? Something I can do for you. So the more you act with empathy, again, the more you lessen those stressors, and the more people will be open to what you have to say because they inherently try to trust you more.
Maybe something to add from business perspective, just very short answer is, yes, empathy, that's for sure. On the business axis, what we have started doing is, I hate to say short term because you have to always look at the mid-long term, but nowadays with this uncertainty, we set short-term targets. So you give clarity for a certain period, 1 quarter, 2 quarters, and I'm also incentivizing my team leaders, my employees, based on the short-term achievement, because I don't know whether phase 4, phase 5, wave 5 will come or not. I don't know if this vaccine we're talking about, because the whole world is hoping that Q2 everything will be open. I don't know. I don't know if you know it, but I don't know. Right? So what we are trying to do now is setting short-term targets so that we can have as objective assessment as possible, because business is all about setting KPIs and making sure you achieve these KPIs. However, if these KPIs are long-term, let's say 1 year, 2 years, and you don't know what's going to happen, maybe again a disruption, then you really have problems. So my advice would be set short-term targets, 1 or 2 quarters for the moment, and make sure that your team is, like Dr. Mansoor said, gets the full energy, full focus, attention, and positive behavior around it to make this happen. And then after 6 months, we will see what's going to happen by then.
Yeah. Well, dear panel members, I very much appreciated your contribution. I really enjoyed the discussion. I think I've been writing here like mad. I mean, we can see a recording, but I've all written it all down. Dr. Mansoor, your tips, all the tips from Bart and from Erdem. So on behalf of, I think this is a topic we can keep on discussing. I mean, there's no doubt. And it's very interesting. There were questions around what will the office space look in the future. Well, I think it's all a bit of crystal ball glazing we have, but it will definitely be very different. Office space will be different, learning will be different. The tools will be developed, enhanced, developed. So I think there's a lot of discussion that came up and you instilled with your comments. So I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of the Business Council. And I also saw that there are a lot of attendees that came from outside our community. So I think everybody must be very interested in what has been discussed today. So thank you very much all for your contribution. And I hope that people will be able to find you if they have more questions. No doubt they will come, because this is an evolving situation. This, as Erdem said, we don't know what's going to happen. it could change, so things could get worse even from now on. So again, on behalf of the Netherlands Business Council in the UAE, thank you very much for your contribution.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for the organization. Thank you.
Thank you very
Is
much.
there anything,
Bye.
Stephanie, you want to add, or are we happy to close the webinar? I see you waving.
Yes, no, thank you very much. And thank you also to all our attendees for staying with us in this 1.5 hours. It was very interesting. Positive energy.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Tot straks.
Doei.
Bye.